In this life we are often bound by our desires, forever chasing what we do not have, striving for what we think we need. Yet in this pursuit we find only restlessness, and the more we want, the more we suffer. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, understood the futility of this endless striving. He taught us that peace is not found in the constant accumulation of desires, but in the simple act of accepting what is. We must release the grip of wanting, and instead embrace the present moment as it is, with clarity and equanimity. The key to true freedom lies not in obtaining more, but in accepting life on its own terms, knowing that it unfolds exactly as it should. Let us delve into this philosophy of acceptance, for it is only through acceptance that we can master our inner peace and walk the path of the wise. 1. Introduction to acceptance and control. We live in a world where we are conditioned to want, to always seek, to never be satisfied with what we have. From the moment we are born, we are taught that our happiness lies in acquiring more possessions, more recognition, more experiences. We are made to believe that peace comes from attaining our desires, but this is nothing but an illusion. True peace, true tranquility, can only be found not in the accumulation of external things, but in the mastery of one's inner world. This is where acceptance comes into play. To accept is to understand what is beyond our control and to focus only on what is within our grasp. This, in its essence, is the core of Stoic philosophy. It is the art of distinguishing between the things we can influence and those we cannot. The former requires our active participation, the latter demands our surrender. The wisdom of Marcus Aurelius teaches us that peace does not come from acquiring more, but from realizing that we need less, from recognizing that contentment lies in accepting life as it is, without the constant need for change. Marcus Aurelius, as a leader, had countless external pressures. He was an emperor, a statesman, a general, and yet he was profoundly aware of the futility of external pursuits when it came to attaining true peace. He faced wars, betrayals, and the demands of leadership. And yet, throughout it all, he wrote to himself, reminding himself of the necessity to accept what he could not change, to focus his energy on what was within his control, and to embrace each moment without resistance. He understood that while the world outside may be filled with chaos, we are always in charge of how we respond to it. In our lives, we often find ourselves fighting against what is. We resist the people who annoy us, the situations that frustrate us, the circumstances that seem unfair. We wish for things to be different than they are, and in doing so, we create unnecessary suffering. The Stoic perspective, however, asks us to do something radically different. It urges us to stop resisting, to stop wishing for things to be other than they are, and to start accepting what we cannot change. This is not to say that we should resign ourselves to a life of passivity or inaction. Acceptance, in the Stoic sense, does not mean complacency. It means recognizing the natural order of things, understanding that there are forces at play beyond our control, and then choosing to act within our sphere of influence with clarity, wisdom, and calm. Acceptance is not weakness, it is the strength to release the struggle and to focus only on what we can shape. It is the power to choose our response to life's challenges, and in doing so, to reclaim our peace. When Marcus Aurelius spoke of control, he was not merely referring to the power over external events. He understood that the greatest power lies in controlling the mind. The mind, when it is allowed to wander in the realm of desires and wants, becomes a turbulent sea, constantly rocked by the winds of longing. But when we master the mind, when we choose to focus on what we can control, we find a calm center. Acceptance of the present moment is the beginning of this mastery. When we accept what is happening right now without judgment, without resistance, without the need for it to be different, we liberate ourselves from the endless cycle of desire. We no longer demand life to bend to our will. Instead, we align ourselves with life's flow, trusting that everything is unfolding as it should, even if we cannot immediately see the reason. The greatest minds in history have recognized the power of acceptance. They understood that while we cannot always control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. Acceptance is not passive resignation, it is active engagement with the present moment without the need to manipulate it. It is a profound shift in perspective, where we no longer see obstacles as hindrances, but as opportunities to grow, to learn, to practice resilience. So, let us ask ourselves, what is it that we are resisting in our lives? What are we wishing to change that we cannot? What are we holding on to that is only causing us pain? The practice of acceptance requires us to look honestly at these questions and, in answering them, to free ourselves from the grip of want. Once we stop wanting, once we stop fighting against the flow of life, we open ourselves to the peace that comes from truly living in harmony with the world as it is. In the end, it is not our circumstances that determine our peace, but our response to them. Acceptance does not mean we are passive spectators of life's unfolding drama. It means we are active participants in the only thing we can control, our own thoughts and actions. It means embracing the present moment exactly as it is, without resistance, and finding in that acceptance the path to inner peace. Let this be our starting point, to accept what is, to surrender to the flow of life, and to find in that surrender the strength to rise above all that would disturb our peace. This is the wisdom of the Stoics, the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, and it is the path that will lead us to true freedom. 2. The power of wanting versus the peace of accepting. In the constant pursuit of desires, there is a subtle trap that ensnares the mind. We are led to believe that peace lies in the acquisition of what we do not yet possess, that fulfillment will come when we finally attain the object of our longing. This belief, however, is nothing more than a falsehood that leads to an unending cycle of desire and frustration. The truth, as Marcus Aurelius so profoundly understood, is that peace comes not through the fulfillment of our wants, but through the acceptance of what is, exactly as it is, in this very moment. The power of wanting is vast. It shapes our actions, our decisions, and our perceptions of the world around us. It is a constant force that pushes us forward, ever seeking, never satisfied. The act of wanting is rooted in the belief that we lack something essential, that something outside of us holds the key to our happiness. This illusion takes many forms. We want wealth, success, approval, or pleasure. We want our lives to be different, better, more comfortable, more secure. But in all this wanting, we overlook a fundamental truth. The very act of wanting is the source of our unrest. To want is to acknowledge that we are not content with what we have, that we are somehow incomplete, that we are dependent on external circumstances to fulfill us. This creates a gap, a void within the soul, and in trying to fill that gap, we become enslaved to the pursuit of desires. We chase after them like a man lost in the desert, ever thirsting but never reaching the oasis. This is where the Stoic practice of acceptance becomes the antidote. To accept is to shift our focus away from the external world and turn inward, where peace already resides. Acceptance asks us to release the grip of desire, to stop fighting against the present moment, and to recognize that what we have right now is enough. It is not that we give up on growth or improvement, rather, we stop attaching our sense of worth and happiness to the things we do not yet have. Acceptance does not mean we stop striving, but that we stop measuring our contentment by what we still lack. The power of wanting creates an internal disturbance that distorts our perception of the world. We become obsessed with what we do not possess, and in doing so we lose sight of all that we already have. We cannot see the beauty of the present moment because our minds are preoccupied with the future that we have constructed in our imaginations, a future that promises fulfillment but never delivers. This is the nature of desire. It is insatiable. It promises peace, but in its wake it leaves only emptiness. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us that we have the ability to cultivate peace within, regardless of external circumstances. He understood that to want is to give away our power, for in the act of wanting, we place our happiness in something outside of ourselves, something that is beyond our control. But in acceptance, we reclaim that power. We stop depending on the world to change in order for us to be content. We stop waiting for the perfect circumstances to arrive before we allow ourselves to feel at peace. Instead, we find peace in the present moment as it is, without the need for it to be different. Acceptance, therefore, is not a passive act. It is an active choice, a conscious decision to relinquish the mind's attachment to desires and to rest in the knowledge that life, as it unfolds, is exactly what it should be. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself that what happens in life is neither good nor bad in itself, but only becomes so when we attach our judgments to it. By accepting life as it is, we free ourselves from the emotional turmoil that comes with wanting what we do not have. We stop clinging to things, stop expecting them to bring us fulfillment, and we allow ourselves to experience the world without the burden of expectation. There is a profound peace in the moment we cease to desire what is not ours to have. When we stop seeking external validation, external rewards, or external possessions to complete us, we experience an inner calm that cannot be disturbed by the fluctuations of the world. We become like a rock in the ocean, steadfast and unmoving, regardless of the waves that crash against us. In this peace, we find our true power. In contrast, when we place our happiness in the hands of desire, we give away our peace to the world around us. We allow the uncontrollable forces of fate to dictate how we feel. We allow ourselves to be tossed about by the winds of fortune, unable to find stability because we are forever chasing after the next thing. The pursuit of desire makes us slaves to circumstances. Acceptance, however, sets us free. It teaches us that peace is not found in the external world, but within us, in our ability to control our thoughts and reactions. By practicing acceptance, we learn to turn our focus inward, away from what we do not have and toward the rich abundance of what we already possess. We begin to understand that our contentment is not contingent upon the fulfillment of our desires, but upon the cultivation of a mindset that finds value in the present moment, in the simple act of being alive, in the beauty of the world as it is. The power of wanting can never bring lasting fulfillment. It will always leave us wanting more, always searching for something just beyond our reach. But the peace of acceptance is constant. It is ever present, always available, and it is found by those who choose to stop seeking and start embracing the life they have. This is the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, the recognition that we are complete as we are, that peace is not found in the pursuit of more, but in the acceptance of the present, in the acceptance of ourselves as we are. So let us choose peace over wanting. Let us release the desires that bind us and find freedom in acceptance. For it is only through this acceptance that we can experience the true power that lies within, the power to live with serenity, to navigate life's challenges with wisdom, and to walk the path of the Stoic, unfazed by the shifting tides of fortune. 3. Understanding the nature of desire. Desire is a powerful force within us. It drives our actions, shapes our decisions, and forms the foundation of our goals and ambitions. Yet this force, while seemingly essential for human progress, is often the source of our greatest suffering. Marcus Aurelius, in his reflections, understood that desire, when unchecked, distorts the mind and leads us down a path of endless dissatisfaction. He recognized that the root of much of human misery lies in the gap between what we want and what we have. To truly grasp the essence of Stoic philosophy, we must first understand the nature of desire and how it binds us to the world in a way that prevents us from attaining peace. At its core, desire is the longing for something we do not possess. It arises from the belief that we are lacking something essential, that our happiness or fulfillment depends on obtaining that which is outside of us. We desire wealth, fame, approval, or pleasure, often without fully understanding why we want these things or what they will ultimately bring us. The mind, caught in the grip of desire, chases after these objects, thinking that their acquisition will lead to contentment. But once they are obtained, the satisfaction is fleeting and the desire shifts to something else. Thus, desire perpetuates an endless cycle of longing and disappointment. This is the nature of desire. It is insatiable. It promises fulfillment, but its promises are always empty. The more we fulfill one desire, the more new desires arise to take its place. We are never truly satisfied because desire, by its very nature, is a longing for something that is always just beyond our reach. It keeps us constantly striving, constantly seeking, yet never finding lasting peace. Marcus Aurelius warned us against this insatiable nature of desire, urging us to recognize its power over our lives. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, our desires often become the obstacles that prevent us from finding true peace. We become so focused on fulfilling these desires that we forget to ask ourselves whether they are worth pursuing at all. Are we chasing after things that will bring us lasting happiness, or are we simply caught in the cycle of craving more, constantly seeking external validation? Desire, when it is not examined and understood, can take root deep within us, influencing our thoughts, behaviors, and interactions with the world. It shapes our self-worth based on what we have or what we lack. It leads us to compare ourselves to others, to measure our success by the standards set by society or by those around us. In this way, desire separates us from our true selves, from the quiet contentment that can only be found within. The Stoics teach us that we must learn to control desire, to see it for what it truly is. It is a fleeting emotion, a passing impulse that arises in response to the world around us. We must recognize that desire does not define us, nor does it have any intrinsic value. It is merely a response to the perception that we are lacking something. But the truth is, we are never truly lacking anything. We are whole as we are, and everything we need for peace and contentment is already within us. Understanding the nature of desire requires us to examine our own desires honestly and without judgment. What do we truly want? Why do we want it? Is it because we believe it will bring us lasting happiness? Or is it simply because it promises a temporary pleasure, a fleeting sense of fulfillment? In many cases, we find that the desires we pursue are not born out of necessity or wisdom, but out of habit or societal conditioning. We desire what others desire, or we pursue what we believe will give us status, approval, or security. But these desires are often misguided based on external factors that are beyond our control. To truly master desire, we must shift our focus inward. We must learn to recognize the desires that arise within us and ask ourselves whether they are aligned with our true values and purpose. Are these desires serving us, or are they keeping us trapped in a cycle of wanting and dissatisfaction? This is the essential question that the Stoics ask us to confront. If our desires are not aligned with our deeper purpose, if they are based on external validation or fleeting pleasures, then they are distractions, leading us further away from the tranquility that comes from within. When we begin to understand the nature of desire, we realize that we do not need to chase after external things to find peace. The mind, when trained in the Stoic practice of acceptance and self-awareness, learns to see desire for what it truly is, an illusion, a passing thought that holds no real power over us unless we allow it to. By practicing detachment from our desires, we free ourselves from the tyranny of wanting. We stop depending on external circumstances to provide us with happiness and begin to find contentment in the present moment, in the things we already have, in the richness of our own experience. Marcus Aurelius, in his writings, often reminded himself that his mind was the only thing that truly belonged to him. Everything else, his wealth, his position, his reputation, could be taken away, but his thoughts and judgments were his alone to control. The Stoic path teaches us that we can choose how to respond to desire. We can either let it rule us, constantly striving for more and never finding peace, or we can recognize it for what it is and choose to rise above it. The key lies in understanding that our happiness does not depend on the fulfillment of desires, but on our ability to accept life as it is, to find joy in the present moment, and to cultivate a mind that is free from the chains of craving. In this way, understanding the nature of desire is not about denying ourselves the things we want, but about recognizing that our true fulfillment lies not in the objects of desire, but in our ability to transcend them. Desire itself is not the problem. The problem is when we allow it to define us, to control us, and to shape our lives. By understanding this, we can learn to live in harmony with desire, not as its servant, but as its master, choosing wisely what we pursue and finding peace in what we already have. Thus, the Stoic path is not one of repression or denial, but of clarity and wisdom. It is the path of understanding desire for what it is, and in doing so, finding the freedom to live without the constant pull of external cravings. It is the path of recognizing that peace is not found in the pursuit of more, but in the quiet acceptance of what is, in the understanding that we are already whole, and that happiness does not depend on anything outside ourselves. 4. Marcus Aurelius and the concept of amor fati. There is a profound truth in the Stoic philosophy that is often misunderstood in the wider world, a truth that Marcus Aurelius understood deeply and lived by, the concept of amor fati, which translates to love of fate. It is the idea that one should embrace everything that happens in life, not just the good, but also the challenges, the suffering, and the difficulties, as necessary parts of the whole. This is not a passive resignation to fate, but an active acceptance and love of whatever life brings, recognizing that each experience has something to offer in terms of growth, wisdom, and character. For Marcus Aurelius, this was not an abstract philosophical idea, but a practical guide for how to live in the midst of immense responsibility, hardship, and turmoil. As an emperor, he faced constant wars, political intrigue, personal loss, and the daily pressures of ruling a vast empire. Yet his meditations reveal a man who, despite these trials, remained centered in his understanding that everything that happened to him, both good and bad, was part of a larger divine plan. He wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity." This understanding of fate as part of the natural order allowed him to live with a sense of peace and serenity, no matter the external circumstances. To love one's fate is to recognize that all events, whether they appear to us as favorable or unfavorable, are part of a larger cosmic pattern, and they unfold as they are meant to. This does not mean we are passive or indifferent to suffering, but rather that we accept it as something necessary for our growth. It is in adversity, in moments of struggle, that we often find our deepest strength, our most profound lessons, and the opportunities for the development of virtue. The Stoics teach us that there is no such thing as bad fortune. What we may perceive as misfortune is often simply a part of the great flow of life, and it is our judgments about these events that make them seem negative. If we can change our perspective, we can begin to see everything, every joy, and every sorrow as something that is ultimately for our good. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, often reminded himself that the universe is not hostile to him. Rather, it is his own thoughts and judgments that cause him to view events as harmful or unjust. When we let go of our judgments and accept things as they are, we align ourselves with nature, and in that alignment we find peace. Amor fati is about cultivating a mindset that does not resist the natural course of events but embraces them fully, with gratitude. When we encounter a challenge, instead of railing against it or wishing for it to be different, we should ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience? How can I use this moment to cultivate greater wisdom, patience, or resilience? This is the essence of love for fate. It is the refusal to be a victim of circumstance and the choice to see every moment as an opportunity for growth. The concept of amor fati also means recognizing that we are not separate from the world around us. We are part of a larger whole, and everything that happens is interconnected. The events that unfold in our lives are not random, they are a natural part of the world's unfolding order. Whether it is the death of a loved one, a betrayal by a friend, or the loss of a job, these events are opportunities for us to practice the virtues of the Stoics: courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. In the same way that the farmer does not curse the storm for coming but instead uses it as an opportunity to adapt and grow, we too must learn to use every event in our lives as an opportunity for growth. Marcus Aurelius, in the face of his own struggles, was able to embrace the idea of amor fati because he understood that his life was not his own to control. The larger forces at play in the universe, the divine order of things, were beyond his understanding and control. Therefore, the best course of action was to accept what came his way with grace and dignity, knowing that the universe's plan was greater than any individual's desires or plans. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This, in essence, is the foundation of amor fati, the acceptance that we can control only our thoughts, our reactions, and our attitudes toward the events that unfold. The world will continue to do as it will, but we have the power to choose how we engage with it. When we practice amor fati, we also liberate ourselves from the tyranny of expectation. Much of our suffering comes from the conflict between what we expect life to be and what it actually is. We expect things to go our way, to be smooth, to be fair, but life is unpredictable. There is no guarantee that things will turn out as we wish. And yet, if we can embrace amor fati, we free ourselves from the burden of these expectations. We stop hoping for things to go according to our plan and instead accept whatever comes with open arms, knowing that it is exactly what we need for our growth. The very act of letting go of expectations brings peace because we stop fighting against the current of life. To love fate is also to accept that life is impermanent, that all things come and go, and that change is the only constant. When we resist this truth, we suffer. When we embrace it, we find the freedom to live fully in the present moment without the fear of loss or the desire for permanence. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply when he said, "Time is a river of passing events, and the events in it are like the waves. The people, circumstances, and things we cling to are fleeting, and to love our fate is to accept that everything is transitory." This acceptance allows us to find joy in the present moment without attachment to the past or fear of the future. Amor fati is a practice, a mindset, and a way of life. It is the willingness to meet life head-on with a heart full of gratitude and acceptance, knowing that everything, even suffering, is an opportunity for growth. It is the courage to embrace life as it is, to surrender to its flow, and to trust that it will lead us exactly where we need to go. Through amor fati we find peace, for we no longer resist the current of life, but move with it in harmony with the world, finding contentment in the knowledge that all is as it should be. Let us therefore choose to love our fate. Let us see the challenges of our lives not as burdens to bear, but as gifts to be received, as opportunities to strengthen our character and refine our wisdom. In doing so, we will find the same peace that Marcus Aurelius found in the midst of his struggles, the peace that comes from accepting life with all its joys and sorrows, as it is, with an open heart and a clear mind. 5. Embracing the present moment and letting go of the past. The human mind is often caught between two worlds, the past and the future. We spend much of our lives dwelling on what has already happened or anxiously anticipating what is yet to come. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, teach us a vital truth, that the only true time we have is the present moment. The past is gone, and the future has not yet arrived. It is in the present, and only in the present, that we can find peace, clarity, and fulfillment. To truly live a Stoic life, we must learn to let go of the past and stop worrying about the future, focusing instead on the one thing we can truly control, the present. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, constantly reminded himself to stay rooted in the present, to avoid being distracted by the regret of past actions or the anxiety of future events. He knew that true freedom could only be found in the now. He wrote, "Don't waste time on what you cannot control. The past is behind us, we cannot change it, and we cannot undo the decisions we have made. The future is uncertain, it has not yet taken form. What we have and what we can control is this moment. And it is in this moment that we must find our strength, our wisdom, and our peace. To dwell on the past is to lose touch with reality. The past is a collection of memories and events that are no longer present. They cannot be changed, and the more we focus on them, the less energy we have to engage with the world as it is now. Regret, guilt, and sorrow over past actions are common human experiences, but they are ultimately unproductive. They trap us in a cycle of negative emotions, pulling us further from the present moment. The Stoic way is not to ignore the past, but to accept it as it is without judgment. We learn from it, but we do not let it dictate our present or future. When we cling to the past, we allow it to shape our perceptions of who we are and who we can be. We identify ourselves with our mistakes, our failures, or even our past successes, tying our sense of self-worth to things that are no longer relevant. Marcus Aurelius, however, taught that our identity is not defined by the past, but by our actions in the present. He understood that every moment offers us the chance to act virtuously, to choose wisely, and to live according to the principles we value. In this way, the past is a lesson, but it is not a prison. It is only in the present moment that we can choose to act with wisdom and virtue. Similarly, the future is a realm of uncertainty. We cannot know what is to come, and no amount of worrying or anticipating will alter its course. Yet it is natural for us to worry about the future, about our careers, our relationships, our health, and our security. But Marcus Aurelius cautioned against this, reminding himself that we cannot control what lies ahead. Instead of worrying about what might happen, we should focus on how we will respond to whatever comes. The future is not a cause for fear, but an opportunity to demonstrate our character. As he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The future is often a projection of our desires and anxieties. We imagine scenarios both good and bad, and we let these projections take on a life of their own. We fear the worst, hoping for the best, but all the while we remain disconnected from the present moment. By focusing on the future, we lose sight of the opportunities available to us right now. We delay our happiness, our fulfillment, and our peace, believing that they are something to be attained later, when the future unfolds as we wish. This is the root of much suffering, the belief that we must wait for something outside of ourselves to change before we can be content. To live in the present requires a radical shift in perspective. We must learn to accept that the present moment is the only one we truly have, and that it is enough. The present is not just a passage between the past and the future, it is where life happens. Every moment offers us an opportunity to act with purpose, to live with intention, and to align our thoughts and actions with our highest values. When we focus on the present, we become fully engaged in life as it is, rather than as we imagine it to be. By embracing the present moment, we free ourselves from the tyranny of time. We stop racing towards some future goal, some future moment that we believe will bring us peace, and instead we cultivate peace in the now. This does not mean that we abandon our plans or our aspirations, but rather that we engage with them in a way that is grounded in the present. We take action today in this moment with the understanding that the future will unfold as it will, and that our only responsibility is to act virtuously now. This is the Stoic practice of mindfulness, not in the sense of an abstract or detached awareness, but a deep engagement with life as it is. We observe our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions in the present without being overly attached to them or carried away by them. We accept whatever arises without judgment, and we focus on how we can respond in a way that is consistent with our values. In doing so, we break free from the endless cycle of regret and worry, and we find ourselves living with a sense of purpose and peace. Let us also remember that the present is where we can practice virtue. The past is already gone, and the future is beyond our grasp. But in the present we can practice wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. It is in the present that we have the opportunity to cultivate our character, to align our actions with our highest principles, and to make a difference in the world around us. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. The present moment is the canvas upon which we paint our lives, and each thought, each action is a stroke of that brush. We must choose wisely, for it is in the present that we shape our future. Thus, to truly live the Stoic life, we must focus on the present, letting go of the past and relinquishing our fear of the future. We must accept the present moment as it is, knowing that it is enough and that it is where our true power lies. Only by embracing the present can we find the freedom to live fully, to act with purpose, and to cultivate the inner peace that comes from living in harmony with the world as it is. Through this practice, we become the masters of our own lives, and we find true contentment, not in what we lack, but in the richness of the present moment. 6. Cultivating inner strength through self-discipline. In a world that constantly seeks to pull our attention in countless directions, the ability to cultivate inner strength through self-discipline is perhaps the most valuable skill we can develop. For Marcus Aurelius, the foundation of a virtuous life was rooted in the mastery of the self. To be a true Stoic is to recognize that the external world is beyond our control, but our own thoughts, actions, and reactions are entirely within our power. It is through the cultivation of self-discipline that we develop the strength to navigate the storms of life with composure, purpose, and clarity. Self-discipline is not simply about adhering to a set of rigid rules or restrictions. It is about having the ability to control our desires, our impulses, and our emotions. It is about choosing the difficult right over the easy wrong, making decisions not based on short-term gratification, but on long-term virtue and wisdom. In this sense, self-discipline is the key to true freedom. It is the ability to choose our responses to external events, rather than allowing those events to dictate our state of mind. It is the power to act in accordance with reason and our highest values, regardless of how we feel in the moment. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the importance of self-discipline in his meditations. He understood that external circumstances, no matter how challenging, are not the true source of our suffering. Our suffering arises from our internal responses to those circumstances. If we allow our impulses, desires, and emotions to control us, we give away our power to the external world. But if we cultivate self-discipline, we can remain steadfast and resolute, no matter what challenges arise. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Self-discipline begins with a commitment to living intentionally, to making conscious decisions about how we will act, think, and feel. It requires us to be fully aware of our inner state and to actively choose how we respond to the events of our lives. When faced with temptation, stress, or emotional upheaval, self-discipline allows us to pause, reflect, and choose a course of action that aligns with our values rather than simply reacting in the heat of the moment. This requires self-awareness. To be disciplined, we must first know ourselves deeply, the sources of our desires, our fears, our weaknesses, and our strengths. We must be willing to examine our thoughts and behaviors without judgment, to see ourselves clearly, and to confront the areas where we are weak. The Stoics believe that we are all capable of greatness, but only if we are willing to look honestly at ourselves and take responsibility for our actions. Self-discipline is not about being perfect, it is about being conscious of our imperfections and choosing to improve one step at a time. Self-discipline also means resisting the pull of distractions. In our modern world, we are constantly bombarded by stimuli messages, notifications, entertainment, and the endless stream of external demands. It is easy to fall into the trap of seeking momentary pleasure or relief, to lose ourselves in distractions and forget our purpose. But Marcus Aurelius taught that true peace comes from focusing on what truly matters and letting go of what does not. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Self-discipline is the ability to stay focused on our goals, to avoid the distractions that would pull us away from our purpose, and to keep our attention on the things that are truly important. In practice, self-discipline requires us to cultivate good habits, to develop routines that reinforce our values and our goals. These habits may not be glamorous or exciting, but they are the building blocks of a disciplined life. Marcus Aurelius, though an emperor, did not live a life of indulgence. His meditations reveal a man who embraced simplicity and moderation, understanding that true power lies not in external wealth or success, but in internal mastery. He practiced daily habits of reflection, self-examination, and mindfulness, always striving to be better, to be more virtuous, and to align his actions with reason and nature. One of the most powerful forms of self-discipline is the ability to endure hardship with grace. Life will always present us with challenges, loss, illness, failure, and disappointment. How we respond to these challenges determines our character. A person who lacks self-discipline will react impulsively in anger, fear, or frustration, allowing external events to govern their emotions. But a Stoic, like Marcus Aurelius, will meet hardship with calm acceptance, understanding that adversity is a natural part of life and that it offers an opportunity for growth. The Stoics believe that every obstacle is a chance to practice virtue, to be patient, courageous, resilient, and wise. This is not to say that self-discipline means suppressing our emotions or pretending that we do not feel pain, sadness, or frustration. It is about acknowledging these emotions without allowing them to control us. The Stoic response is not to deny the feelings we experience, but to observe them with detachment and choose how to act in the face of them. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that emotions, while natural, do not have to dictate his actions. He chose to respond with reason and virtue rather than reacting from a place of unchecked emotion. Self-discipline is also about recognizing that we are responsible for our actions and decisions, and that no one else can change our inner state. It is easy to blame others or external circumstances for our problems, but true strength comes from taking full responsibility for our own lives. As Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." By disciplining our thoughts, we can shape our inner world and, by extension, our outer reality. The Stoic understands that they are the master of their own mind, and by exercising self-discipline, they can maintain inner peace no matter what the external world presents.